Good evening and welcome to the House and Economic Development Committee. I am James Torrance, Chair of the committee and representative of the 7th District. Today, the committee will hear Legislative Oversight 250034, Code Enforcement Inspector Accountability. In attendance is Vice Chair Odette Ramos of the 14th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Zach Blanchard of the 11th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And a member that we welcome all the time to this committee, but not as a member of the committee, Councilman Mark Parker of the 1st District.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mr.
And a host of members from the Council President and Mayor's office. I just like to skip over. I love y'all individually. And DCHD. Let's begin. Bill LO 25034, Code Enforcement and Inspector Accountability for the purpose of calling relevant city agencies and representatives as well as third-party stakeholders to review and conduct oversight on code enforcement process in the city of Baltimore. This will be an accountability of the code enforcement inspectors, consistency in which the code enforcement is enforced, hearing about working conditions, staffing constraints, and other concerns. This was introduced by me on August 8th, 2025. The reason why I introduced this legislative oversight hearing is because, one, I represent a lot of redline communities in West Baltimore. And what I find is that I have the same illegal dumping sites that have always been there. And it's actually interesting because when I have conversations with my predecessors, going back to 2007, these sites have still remained. And I am now the 4th council person since 2007. So consistency in the work has continued to be the same, but also for the public's consumption, there are 2 lanes of code enforcement. There's the illegal dumping, the property management, and for me, my residents often they intertwine the both. I do sometimes myself. One of the things I believe in accountability portions of is understanding where our data is in terms of the agency in its review outside of when we have our budget hearings. We hear the percentages of closed cases, but not closed does not always mean closed for us. And residents will follow up and they'll file duplicate 311s. So here's a level set so we understand what is code enforcement in each branch of code enforcement in the city, but also looking at the data in which we've asked for. To give you an idea, I've asked for data for the last 24-month trends. The reason why is because I want to level set. I want to know where we ended in last year to where we are today, so we understand what it looks like. That gives me what it looks like halfway through the budget year from last year and halfway through this current budget year. So we can have a conversation moving into budget hearings to discuss what does it look like in terms of operations. For many people know me, I've been having issues with code enforcement in terms of persons who are doing illegal construction in our homes. I have a lot of vacant property. People see an opportunity in which they can do work in their homes. I lift up a young woman who lived in Penn North that on a Saturday night, her neighbor decided to take a basement window and convert it into a door and crack 2 foundations. And no one was available to respond but the Baltimore City Police Department. And the first thing a police officer says, this isn't my duty. And you know what? It is not his duty. It is not her duty. In addition to that, we have the same issue every year with grass. No matter where you go, we have grass that is always growing. And I always say there's no need to send a person out to measure the grass if we know for the past 3 years that the grass has been there. How about we create a system in which our sister agency automatically cuts the grass so that we can worry about things that are important, such as one of our seniors who may have a gutter hanging, and how do we get them connected to the light program instead of finding them? How do we connect people to processes and systems that support them, and we're not being punitive as a city government? So that's why I wanted to have this conversation in terms of capacity, because what I envision, and I often say this about the agency, I'm often met with a no, not a how can we do it. I'm a firm believer in systems. To give a background, when I was here as an intern in the mayor's office, we revised the Clean and Green through Clean and Green of Baltimore, the Adopt a Lot process. We took a 24-month process and got it down to 3 months because we sat and we literally had a flow chart that says that if this is gonna go in someone's inbox, it's in John's inbox. We know it's going in John's inbox. John has 3 days to reply, to send it back to his friend in another agency, and we knew who the next person was in the queue before Oracle and others created the systems to track these. So I think we can get back to that, but also create the systems by holding our agency accountable. And I always say this, I was sitting here by my residents to dream big, not to just stay with the status quo. So with that being said, I will turn it over to the agency for their presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Torrance, Vice Chair
Ramos, honorable members of the council and committee, and our valued public who have joined us both in person and online this evening. I am Scott Davis, Chief of Staff for Baltimore City's Department of Housing and Community Development. The Housing Commissioner is under the weather this evening, so I am representing. I am joined by our team of Deputy Commissioners Jason Hessler over our Permits and Litigation Division, Deputy Commissioner Eric Booker of Code Enforcement and Emergency Operations. We have Assistant Commissioners Yates and Goldring, Superintendents G and Quarles, Director Gray. We also have our Chief of Communication, Tammy Hawley, and our legislative team, Stephanie Murdoch and Jason Wright. Before we jump into the presentation, I just want to say, councilmen and members of the council, we hear you and we have those same concerns. These are items that our staff work hard on, and just like you, just like the residents, when dumping happens repeatedly, it is frustrating. We know that this work is hard, and we know that our staff work incredibly hard to deliver this service to the residents of Baltimore. They are out on the streets every day, whether it be today's weather or whether, and they will be out there in August when it is 105 degrees. As Commissioner Kennedy often says when she, is before, we are not perfect, and we look forward to collaborate on ways that we can improve and continue to deliver outstanding service. I think one of the things our staff that do this, and it is no secret that we have, especially in the Property Maintenance Code Enforcement Division, been short-staffed for the last several years since COVID, but we are now on a path to be fully staffed up. But this is not a job for everyone. This is physically demanding work. You deal with the climate, you deal with the temperatures, and you also have to deal with the situations with the neighborhoods, and it is not for everyone. However, we do have staff that are incredibly dedicated and passionate and have stayed with this work for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 plus years. Last year, we had an inspector who retired with 54 years of service as a housing inspector. And so this work is incredibly important to us. This is part of the larger Reframe Baltimore strategy where we will work together to address issues in community. We recognize that sometimes, with illegal dumping, yes, there are challenges in being able to prosecute those cases. However, as we work to revitalize neighborhoods, to renovate vacants, we are able to bring change to the community. And I just want to say that our staff each and every day, that is what they are doing. Is this, which one do I hit? No? There we go, okay. So one of our central pillars is ensuring safe conditions through code enforcement. And we focus around the community, and our decisions are data-driven and based on national best practices. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, within DHCD, they are split largely into two different sections: our Property Maintenance Code Enforcement and DHCD's Special Investigations Unit. So Property Maintenance Code Enforcement makes up the Code Enforcement and Emergency Operations Division. They conduct well over 145,000 inspections each year and monitor all vacant buildings and parcels in the city. The Special Investigations Unit is within DHCD's Permits and Litigation Division, and while they are both best known for their role in investigating illegal dumping and environmental inspections, they also carry out over 20 distinct functions such as social club task force, vendor enforcement, and zoning inspections. SIU collaborates with multiple city agencies in their efforts to curb illegal and nuisance behavior and provide positive outcomes for all residents and neighborhoods in the city. Looking at both sections, we will cover enforcement process, inspector accountability, enforcement consistency, working conditions, staffing, and resource constraints. Wait, are you? Okay. Okay. So just as we start, just as a note, there is a difference between a violation notice and a citation, in that a violation notice is a document issued to the property owner or responsible party when a violation is identified. It requires a re-inspection, and no fines are issued at that stage as part of the violation notice. Failure to correct violations may result in further action, including a failure to abate citation and/or litigation. A citation is a formal enforcement document issued to the property owner or responsible party that imposes a monetary fine and can be contested through the Environmental Control Board. We wanted to provide this because citation and notice often, get tossed around as the same thing, but they do serve separate functions. And as noted, if a notice is not corrected, a citation can be issued for failing to abate. All right, looking at property maintenance code enforcement. This division enforces the building, fire, and related codes of Baltimore City to ensure safe buildings, habitable housing, and decent neighborhoods while providing prompt and courteous service to those citizens and clients that desire the same. This is an overview of the divisional organizational chart. It is divided, that division, into inspector operations and then human services and emergency management. Within our inspector operations, we have 2 superintendents and a total of 6 with 1 vacant assistant superintendents that cover the city. This is a breakdown of the districts that we have for property maintenance code enforcement. The yellow line is the outline of the districts, which are Southeast, Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, and Central. The black lines and the numbers are the sub-districts, which are broken down across the city. These are broken down based on workload, not geographical size, as in certain areas of the city that have higher violations, the inspector has a smaller geographical territory to cover. So this team conducts property maintenance inspections, responds to 311 service requests, and issues notices and citations to enforce compliance. Sanitation is a subset of that enforcement that addresses sanitation violations only. Special operations primarily engages in coordinating the removal of occupants in illegally occupied dwellings that are considered to be a vacant building. The team also handles the inspection of all tenant cases for rent escrow that have been filed with the court in order to inform the judge's decisions. This is a high-level flow chart of the inspection process as it comes from a resident coming into 311. The inspector then investigates to determine whether or not a violation exists. If it exists, it is a notice or citation depending on the violation is issued, and the 311 is closed. Depending on the type of violation, it may be something that is then referred to DPW to either clean or board or do additional work. And then notices are inspected on a regular schedule, and if violations have been corrected, if they have not, then we can issue citations, the failure to abate citations, and/or if it escalates to legal action.
Can we pause right there? I
Yes.
just want to make sure we get timelines for each thing, because I don't want to lose this thought. I've seen something get us a notice and nothing happened for 2 years versus something happened, and this is a thing that we've had as a council members. We've seen different timelines on different notices versus citations. So I would like to understand what is the general expectation for when is the notice, how long the notice is, and what the citation, because what is received by a resident is a general generic thing, but because of workload, I don't know if people can get back to it, because if I look at the stats that are coming up, we're always chasing like sanitation things. So I just want to make sure that like, I didn't see that in the agency thing about in terms of workload. What's the typical timeline for getting back to getting that citation? Because I've seen a notice out there, there's been an issue, but this took a while to come back because of the workload with that inspector.
Do you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, that's, Councilman, that's accurate. Is the playing field is very fluid when it comes to notices and the demand that the inspectors have on them on a daily basis. So a notice, in an ideal world, we can get back out on a notice within 60 to 90 days. But because of the amount of demand that comes in from the citizens from an SR standpoint, the operation is very fluid. So some notices that aren't as high of a priority may get pushed out further than the ones that are more of an emergency in nature. So that's accurate.
So that's very helpful. So I just want to, Tony, can you take this down? A question to think about, because after going to the National League of Cities, they have an approach that's different than us, where they use people in an administrative or clerical position to call back to make sure that the person has corrected it. Which a lot of cities are doing to keep up with their code enforcement. I actually said it in a session about it. They even have AI systems that allow to go back and look at it. I think we need to have that conversation, because the men and women have to go back out into the streets all the time. And if we keep getting the sanitation things from what I've seen from the data, there's no place about it. So I just want to come back to that for general questions, and we'll move forward. Okay. Thank you.
As part of the workload for the property maintenance division is conducting inspections. Those are of residential and commercial properties, also both interior and exterior inspections. For interior inspections, those we can only do if the occupant, either the tenant or the owner, invites the inspector into the property. As noted, a lot of the work is driven by 311 complaints and SRs that are put in, service requests. And then as part of the work as follow-up to those inspections is researching the properties to identify the ownership information, where notices need to go, identifying and documenting those violations, issuing the notices and citations. Oh, do you want to go to the next? Okay. As we mentioned, re-inspections. Also, the team does do public assistance and education, providing information around remediation steps, ensuring that folks are aware of what the code requirements are. We do investigate illegal occupancy of individuals who may be unauthorized occupants in vacant properties. The team works interagency on joint investigations, and then also as part of legal proceedings, they will prepare case files and provide testimony in housing court, rent court, and environmental hearings and other legal processes. For inspector accountability, The division has a series of standard operating procedures that guide both the inspector and management teams. These SOPs include areas such as daily sign in and out, work completion, equipment responsibility, photographic documentation, inspector appearance, vacates, and rent escrow operations. All inspections are documented currently in CHIP, which is the agency's inspection software system, and verified by the work checkers for final approval. For consistency, the team annually responds to approximately 60,000 resident service requests that come in as 311s. In addition to daily field activity, in calendar year 2024, the team issued 26,987 citations, and thus far in calendar year 2025, of which we are nearing the close, 34,760 citations. We aim to inspect all vacant properties at least 4 times per year, with some inspections occurring more frequently based on risk or activity levels. In fiscal year 25, the division issued over 8,500 failure to abate citations on properties with vacant building notices. In FY 26 so far, we're 5.5 months into fiscal year 26, the division has issued 3,539 failure to abate citations on vacant buildings. This reflects our continued efforts to ensure compliance and address persistent violations with the divisional tools that we have. The Baltimore Vacants Reinvestment Council dashboard is an example of a publicly facing source of information around code enforcement activity. This dashboard contains information related to many functions in DHCD, but one of the code enforcement related functions is the number of vacant building notices that have been issued a failure to abate citation. This tracks the city and state's vacants revitalization goals and strategies and processes through real-time tracking of key metrics. This is just a screenshot of what the page for code enforcement looks like on that dashboard. There's a lot of information available, and we encourage anyone to check that out. This is part of our work in implementing Reframe Baltimore, which is the city's strategic strategy to reduce all vacant properties here in the city. For working conditions, the property maintenance division has 3 office locations, one in Northeast, one in Northwest, and then here downtown in the Benton building. DGS is responsible for the maintenance of all 3 of those facilities. As I mentioned at the beginning, external work conditions vary significantly by neighborhood, as we know. And some areas, whether it is for SIU, as we will mention shortly, or property maintenance, present more complex safety challenges than others. Workers in these environments may encounter situations that escalate into confrontation, including verbal harassment, threats, and physical assault. We maintain close relationships with the Baltimore Police Department, the Fire Department, the Sheriff's Office, and other enforcement agencies that we reach out to that require further security. And we also utilize EAP, the Employee Assistance Program resources for staff who may experience threatening and/or traumatic incidences in the field. Also as part of the city's heat and cold safety awareness trainings, and then field and practical training is provided by the on-site trainer during onboarding, and then in-service and refresher trainings are also provided for all inspectors by a trainer, and then there are also Workday online trainings. For staffing and resource constraints, the city is divided into 64 code enforcement territories or sub-districts, which then are grouped into 5 inspection districts. And then we have 2 zones, the north, which covers the northeast and northwest districts, and the south, which covers southwest, southeast, and central. We currently have a total of 51 inspectors. That is across our sanitation inspectors, housing inspectors, and senior housing inspectors. We are working diligently with HR to fill our positions, and on the next page will be specific numbers. But as noted, you know, field work does occur in challenging environments, and so these can be challenging positions to fill. And, you know, inspectors need to possess a sense of situational awareness for each neighborhood, and not everyone who initially joins recognizes all of the, these situations are not for them. And so for staffing, which, there we go. So you can see this is our breakdown of positions with the total and then the number that are vacant in parentheses. We currently have, as of this week, in offer pre-employment process for sanitation inspectors, a grant service specialist housing inspector, 1 housing inspector senior, and 4 housing inspectors. Inspector-wise, that would then bring us up to having 6 vacancies, 4 housing inspectors and 2 senior housing inspectors. As a note, the sanitation enforcement inspector, those positions, that was a strategy that the team developed this year to be able to target those sanitation and SRs. And so those staff are currently hired as community aides, and there are 9, in addition to the 41 housing inspector positions, there are 9 positions that are currently being reclassed to be the sanitation enforcement inspector.
Quick pause. Can
Yes.
you explain to the public a senior inspector versus a regular inspector? So I just didn't want the term to be used. The others were like intuitive, but the senior versus the regular inspector needs to be something said.
Sure, if I may, Mr. Chair. The housing inspector comes in and does the basic observing and document all of the technical inspections and input of the findings in the field, and they also testify in court if needed. Senior inspector, the difference is that senior inspector can participate in training. The senior inspector can assist with checking the work of the junior inspector, and the senior inspector also, I think I already mentioned, is a trainer to the junior inspector. Back in the day, when we were responsible for multiple family dwelling inspections, the senior inspector had the skill set where they knew what fire separation was, and they did the actual multiple family dwelling inspections before we went to the new model.
And can you just, what the code, the tests that seniors have to?
Oh, yes, thank you for that, Chief of Staff. And there is also a requirement for them to receive the property maintenance certification in order to be a senior inspector. The junior inspector or the housing inspector, that's not a requirement for the housing inspector.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure because everything else was intuitive, but that.
And we see that as a role also for employee advancement, which is one of the things that we want to be able for career advancement. It is an ability to move into a more senior and lead position, as Deputy Commissioner Booker stated. Moving now to Special Investigations Unit, or SIU. This is the org chart. This unit consists of 17 people. Currently, the chief or the director of that team that position is open. We completed interviews last Friday, and I believe the offer letter was being prepared today. And so we will have that. And this is one where In the last 3 years since I have been here at DHCD, we went from having several vacancies to being effectively fully staffed here. This team is largely, we have code enforcement investigator 1s and code enforcement investigator 2s. Similar to the housing inspectors, the 2s can serve in a lead role as work checkers and also my brain and can handle more complex cases. All right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there are quite a number of areas of responsibility for SIU. These include addressing illegal dumping and environmental inspections, which includes responding to SRs and also monitoring cameras. They do hazardous waste investigations, both civil service of process, criminal summons service, skip trace inspections, zoning inspections, urban renewal violation investigations, property registration enforcement, both rental and short-term rental licensing enforcement, title searches for planned demolitions and stabilizations, homestead tax credit enforcement, participate in the city's social club task force, other multi-agency inspection task force, vendor enforcement along with BPD and the Department of Finance, hoarding cases, both illegal sign and campaign sign service requests, coordinates with BGE on theft of energy cases to investigate, and then also investigates exterior lighting violations. This is from a pamphlet that we have, just some information that breaks down SIU with actions that we can take, citations. There are also criminal charges and penalties, work orders to clean, and then also monitoring through cameras. If you see illegal dumping, which are large objects, please, we can't address what we don't know about. So we ask that everyone, for any kind of property maintenance violation, that you put it in 311 so that we are able to respond. And so illegal dumping is the disposal of waste on public or private property without the knowledge or consent of the property owner. This can include littering along streets and alleys. It can lead to up to $50,000 in fines and up to 5 years imprisonment, but that is the extreme of potential penalties, but there is a range of penalties that are connected with illegal dumping. With cameras, they are one tool to catch illegal dumping. However, they do not work in all locations. The team is constantly reviewing locations for placement and removal of cameras. We do have a finite number of cameras, and so depending on situations and if dumping has reduced or the camera is not able to catch anything, it may be evaluated to move to another location. Key criteria for a camera to be successful is that it is persistent vehicular illegal dumping, that it's an area with low to normal traffic, and that there is also an ability to install on a city-owned pole or city-owned property. We do also work, where possible to try and address environmental issues. This has included in the past working with DOT to install concrete jersey barriers at access points for dumping, popular dumping sites, increasing lighting, tree trimmings, etc. So these are the service request timelines. This is the SLA for the 311 service request that SLA, sorry, I don't even know what I said. Service level agreement. So this is when you submit in 311 the amount of time that this item is to be resolved within. And so these are the SRs that SIU follows up on. We have illegal dumping, illegal signs on public property, illegal campaign signs on private property, rental licensing or registration. This is a relatively new SR that is an SR if you suspect that a property is non-owner occupied and is not registered, or if it is a rental that is not properly licensed, you can submit that SR, and then also zoning investigations yes. So as part of the enforcement process, most of the complaints, do come through 311, as well as proactive enforcement where we are able in catching in surveillance cameras. Enforcement steps also include citations and/or violation notices, and then criminal charges when sufficient evidence is found to hold a violator accountable. For enforcement of zoning issues, illegal signage also is through 311, and collaboration within DHCD as well as other city agencies. And similar enforcement steps, citations and/or violation notices, and then also civil cases, in this case, injunctions filed to ask the district court to compel compliance. For inspector accountability in SIU, like in property maintenance, we have a series of standard operating procedures to guide the work of the investigators and management team. And all of the 311 investigations are documented in the 311 system. This is something depending on, the violation and where it is, whether or not it goes to DPW for cleaning for next steps. Also, all zoning inspections, citations, and violation notices are documented in CHIP, which again is the DHCD's inspection software system, as well as photos that are taken of those completed investigations. For working conditions, the working conditions in the field are largely the same that our property maintenance housing inspectors face every day. And it is also a challenging, and you are out there, whether it was yesterday's weather or August weather in Baltimore, or, this week it'll be 50 again. And so likewise, SIU works with our partner enforcement agencies for situations that require further security for our staff, and staff complete the same safety trainings, and DHCD works with EAP for any staff that experience threatening and/or traumatic incidences in the field. For the staffing, as I mentioned, there are 17 total positions. There is one position that is the director position that is vacant, and as I said, interviews were held last week, and offer letter is being sent out this week for that position. With constraints, similarly, we do have, a total of 15 investigators, inspectors that cover all of the city for all of those functions. As part of their work, they are required to dig through and open trash bags, sift through discarded home items, climb ladders to remove illegal signage, and maintain surveillance cameras. And this field work occurs in challenging environments, and that this work really is complex, and inspectors have to have a sense of situational awareness for the work that they do. And that wraps up the presentation, and look forward to questions from the committee.
Thank you, colleagues. For this round, we'll do 2 questions each. With that, I'll start off just to level set. There was no data for the Special Investigations Unit. Is there a reason why there's no data provided in the slides? Because that was requested of your legislative staff. So, as a committee request, I would like to see the 12-month data that was asked of both sides, and I would like it tomorrow by close of business. What data did I request? Tomorrow, close of business. I don't like to give people work this close to Christmas. So the expectation was that everyone would come, and when I checked in with staff several weeks ago with the data, I don't see the data for this. So I just want to make sure that the data is provided, and because also this PowerPoint was sent to us at 9:34 this morning. So we didn't have a time to actually react to it. So I just want to level set that some of the conversations that happened today will probably have a follow-up hearing, which will happen in January, and not your traditional hearing 3 months away. So we can have that data and have a very firm conversation about the data. With that being said, the presentation repeatedly states that enforcement decisions are data-driven. What specific data sets exist in SEIU to support this claim, and where are they publicly available?
As far as publicly available, citations that are issued are available in CodeMap. We don't have any charts or any of that kind of stuff on our website that's published. We also provide information to the Department of Public Works or in citations issued that get published in the annual report that DPW issues. As far as data-driven, we look at camera locations to see effectiveness, whether dumping is occurring there or not, if we're able to curb that dumping, and if the cameras are being effective, it may impact whether they stay there or whether we move them or if we have to add additional cameras. In addition, we look at that information to then where we can recommend defensive strategies, lighting, fencing, blocking off the area, those kinds of things. That's I would say the main area where SIU is data-driven. A lot of their other work is like around rental licensing and short-term rentals. In those places, we'll use the data to issue citations, crunching data to see what properties aren't registered or aren't licensed, and then going back through to see if the citations were effective and additional citations are needed.
Perfect. So as a request to the agency, I would like to have a plan to formulate a dashboard for code enforcement, one that is publicly available that looks at not only what is open, what is closed, but looking at how many prosecutions we've had for illegal dumping. In addition to that, as a request I had last year on the budget hearing and I have not received, I want a map of every camera location, and it only be provided to the council. In order for it to be protected, I'm just requesting this through council so that is privileged information, so it's not public available, but the council should know where these cameras actually preside in their districts. As someone who has 3 staff people who drive my district all the time to see where illegal dumping is, I want to know where cameras are so we can work with community members and coalesce together to stop illegal dumping. In addition to that, for the data sets that I will like outside of just the open and closed cases, what we've prosecuted, I also want to look at zoning. As we're moving into the vacancy tax that's coming, in addition to the work that we're doing with Reframe Baltimore, I want to look at people who are violating our zoning code. I'll give you an example that it took 9 months for an assisted living 6 doors up from me to be removed that was illegally placed there. They had 11 residents in a 3-bedroom property, and they violated our brothel law, and then they were unregistered assisted living. So I want to make sure that we're tracking those types of cases in our individual districts, because in West Baltimore, we're overly inundated with them, and I want to make sure that we have a way of tracking it for our agency, but also holding us accountable too, because I am tired of the surprises of I have a rehab house, I have an assisted living that was never registered with the state, nor was it registered with our behavioral health systems in terms of persons who are receiving behavioral health issues. I'll give you an example. I had a property in Reservoir Hill where the top floor was an illegally registered Airbnb. Another thing to add on the data set, those properties are short-term rentals, and then also long-term rentals, because we're not tracking all the people who are registered as rental properties in the city. So these are the things I want to track, because if we're going to have this conversation about upzoning or whatever we have, we need data to actually inform it and be accountable to it as well, because that is a reason why a lot of people have expressed their concerns. In addition to that, I also want to look at the open tickets for zoning, because zoning is difficult, and my understanding is that you probably have a large backlog because you're staffing the number of zoning violations that we do have. I want to know what the current open zoning SR investigations are, how many have been completed, and how many have been assigned to staff persons, and then which ones have you actually had legal pursuit against it, like any legal cases filed. Just want to be transparent. I won't monopolize, so I'm going to turn it over to our vice chair and then open it up to the rest of the members for 2 questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to go back to one of the questions that the chair asked about this flow chart here, this property maintenance flow chart, and ask for timelines in terms of both median and average timeline for each of these sources, and I'll make that a data request as well. I think I get that there are different timelines in some cases for different violations, but I do think that having, is it really once a violation is issued that they actually have 90 days to fix it? That seems like way too long.
No, that's...
Or is it, I want to know exactly, what those timelines are.
No, what I was speaking to there is ideally the reinspection period would take place within that window. So while the notice may be a 30-day notice, we may not get back out on it in 30 days because, as I stated, the day-to-day operation is very fluid. The priority, the superintendent and assistant superintendent they have the latitude to determine what the priorities are for the day as the work comes in, and is usually in this order: interior inspections that are emergency in nature, anything that comes from elected officials, which we call escalated items, any service request that comes from the citizens, and then after that is the vacants, and then everything else. So as stuff comes in, every morning there's a roll call, and that work is prioritized based on that shot group right there. So with respect to getting back out and doing the reinspection, I 100% submit that no, we don't get out and do we can do the initial inspection and the follow-up inspection, but then there are those things that become priorities. And some notices are out there longer than others before there is an actual follow-up. But what I submit to the body today is that there has been thought given to a different work model that I had presented about 1.5 years ago. And I'd like to have conversation with regard to moving to that, because I think something that the chair mentioned earlier about calling for compliance, that was a part of the model that I put together. And we've just started a piece of that model with bringing on the sanitation enforcement team.
Well, I do think that having these timelines would help us understand what are the capacity needs, and then be able to understand. The phone calling is something that came up in another hearing relative to being a little bit more proactive on the permit side. We issue a permit, and then we don't want to wait for the end until somebody calls us, because they're likely not going to call us for an inspection, but to be more proactive. So it sounds like that's kind of the situation that you're trying to do, and that the councilman or the chair is thinking about is, okay, you're going to issue a violation notice. You're going to check in. Of course, folks may say, oh, I'm going to get to it 2 weeks from now. And then, you're going to, but I think the issue is like, we need these process timelines, and then we can work with you on figuring out what, and you can tell us, and we can look at other models as to how do we make sure that it's more efficient in order to get this done. I get the priorities relative to, if there's somebody who needs to repaint their porch, that's not necessarily going to be as high priority as if somebody is got a vacant building and we want to cite them every day like the law allows, which is something that we passed last term. In order to get the liens up. So, maybe it's sort of buckets of some of these, and then, with, all of the, this outline that you have here. I think that would really help us, I think, with understanding the flow.
Yeah, help bridge the gap. So, what I'm hearing is you want to know what the current timelines are in terms of reinspection. I just want to make sure.
I want to know all the timelines for every single thing here.
So you want to know what is how can I put this? What is the timeline we say we're going to do it, but what is the realistic timeline we're actually doing it is what I'm trying to understand, right?
Oh, yeah, so we
Okay,
would want to
perfect.
know what it is and what we're striving for, right?
Perfect.
And then, yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair.
And what I'll do is for the committee, I'll share with you, the Urban Institute created this. Syracuse, New York, and other cities are piloting this program, what is called strategic code enforcement. It's more restorative. Lord, I hate the word restorative. It's more restorative, where we are looking not only for compliance, but we're aiding people in compliance.
Yes.
It is something that a number of our small and large cities were discussing at the National League of Cities, because it costs more to be punitive than it does to actually help people, because I'm pretty sure all the citations you issue, probably a quarter of them is what we collect revenue on. None of the rest is what we get. So instead of reissuing a citation, how do we help someone get across the line? And it saves us staff time, it makes it easier. So I'll share it with Tony so he can share it with the agency and our staff. But I would like to hear what your model would be so I can compare notes, because I genuinely think that we have to rethink how we do things so that we are, and I say this wholeheartedly, because when people move into neighborhoods that traditionally are not from said neighborhood, they notice things they did not notice when they first lived, before they first moved the house. So I know every year that Miss Clayton up the street from me does not cut her grass until June, because she refuses to get out there in May to cut her grass in April, because she doesn't want to cut grass in the rain, and she's 80 years old. I'm not calling code enforcement on her because her grass is too high, because she refuses to cut it. But I think we need to have those conversations so that not only we culturally respective of the individual neighborhoods that we have, but we understand the culture within the neighborhoods as well. So, sorry.
No, it's okay. But I think you're right. I think we need to kind of understand a little bit better about what's happening. But I did want to understand, and maybe this is also a data request, on slide 15, you have the total number of citations. I would like to know within that number, which are repeats, right? Because we can talk about, we didn't cite 34,000 properties. That's not what we did, right? We have, the sort of more egregious violators, right? Which are hopefully our vacants, because I'm hoping that we're getting more citations to them, because we can do $1,000 plus a roof is another $1,000, and another $1,000 and a high grass and weeds. I mean, we worked out the whole formula. Anyway, so I'd like to understand the repeats in terms of the number of properties that are repeatedly being cited, because it leads into so that's one request, data request. And then the other is, I know that there are some that are being abated, right? We're rehabbing the vacant properties, but we also know that somebody's mowing the lawn, or that the porch is getting fixed, right? Like the house across the street from me. And so, I think that it would be interesting to understand the properties, how many properties are getting cited, how many properties are getting, that there's an abatement, and the other piece, and I know it's going to be hard to get, and I don't think finance is here, but I would really like to understand what our collection rate is relative to the citations. I bet it's low, but I want to know that. So that we can have a better understanding of where we are. So you see what I'm trying to get? I would love to understand like our egregious violators that are, some of them are vacant, some of them are not. Just to understand really the totality of what our folks are dealing with. And then you can deploy, just like you said, you have your inspectors accordingly, right? Not just by district, but by capacity, by need.
So, Councilwoman, thank you for that, because it speaks to the deployment. Like every day in roll call, the deployment can be different because we do have those repeat offenders that may receive several citations as opposed to the one up in Northwest Baltimore that we may not get to for a minute because we have something that's more of an emergency and is more escalated. So we look forward to providing that.
But it also speaks to capacity. I mean,
Yes, it does.
are 45
Yes, it
inspectors
does.
the right way? I
Yes,
mean,
it
I'm
does.
using 45, but is that what you need? Do you need more? And I would posit to say you probably need more, given the situation.
Well, ideally, I mean, I'm not going to give an ideal number of inspectors, but one thing that we've been trying to get to for years is some handheld technology so that we could be more immediate on the street. And we haven't been able to get to this handheld technology. So part of what impacts the inspectors is the fact that they have to come back to the office and administratively put in their work. So that takes time off of the street because they have to put the work in so that they can get approved, so notices and citations.
You need to get us the cost of that. Have you done the research to figure out how much it is?
So we're in the process of upgrading the code enforcement system. That software isn't online yet because we're still focusing on the permit side of it.
Yeah.
But that software.
It's all going to talk to each other, right? The permit side and
It's
the,
the same software. But we haven't gone forward with the code enforcement side of that yet because of the focus on the permit side. But that would be used on a cell phone or iPad or similar device to be able to input inspection results, take photos, upload them. So the building inspectors currently are able to use that for their permit-related inspections, but we don't have it for the violation notices and citations yet.
so that's in the works. When are
Yes.
you expecting implementation?
Hopefully by summer.
Summer of 26. Okay. For that. And so that might be a follow-up hearing to understand how that's going. I have several other questions, but I'll yield for my colleagues till the next round.
Colleagues, anyone else? Councilman Blanchard, and then I'll go to my gentleman to the right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start on a happy note. Something that I've, in this office, had a lot of good experiences with is things involving vacant building notices or failure to abate citations in the district. I know sometimes that can be pretty complicated, particularly in commercial districts like my own, and kind of throughout folks on the DHCD side have had a lot of good support from DHCD on this really important issue, so I appreciate that. Something I have not had a good experience with in multiple larger senior or low-income buildings across the district. So we've got, as I think, a indicative example here. So we've been coordinating with residents of one high-rise senior/low-income building in the district for nearly a year, and we're not seeing improvements to the living condition with the building. The building's rental license expired on August 29th. As of yesterday, residents had filed 87 3-in-1 tickets in 2025 related to housing and building code concerns with this single building. As of September 4th, the building had an open violation that's been unabated since May 2024. On December 1st, a new violation was issued for a non-functioning elevator, which is a recurring issue with that elevator. Despite 12 3-in-1 tickets for bed bugs and other insects in the building since August 29th, no violation notice was issued. So this is the period that there was no rental license for the building, or the rental license had expired. Approximately 30 3-in-1 calls were made specifically mentioning bed bugs since last fall and continuing throughout the entirety of 2025. I've had residents of the building show me bed bite marks on their own. They've caught bed bugs in Ziploc bags. There's not one citation or violation notice listed. Residents are continuing to report this as a problem. What do we have to do to hold the property manager accountable here?
Can we say what the property is? Because, you know, a little
It's-
public shame helps people.
It's
too.
1 West Conway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just give me a second. Superintendent Quarles has been engaged on this one. She's going to react to your inquiry.
Good evening. Yes, we did receive at least 30 bed bug complaints. We contact the tenants. We contact the property manager. We did let, closer, okay. Probably. We did contact the property manager. They were treating the property as well as treating the units. The exterminator did give them directions that they have to follow as the tenant. They do have to bag all their items up and wash them in hot water, as well as follow the directions that's given from the exterminator. And both the tenant and the property manager was satisfied with the results.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent. So maybe in some of those situations, the tenants were satisfied. I've spoken with enough residents of the building to know that there's plenty of ongoing frustration there. Maybe the bigger point is there is a well-known ongoing bed bug problem, and the way that this is structured specifically for this is not being resolved. Maybe it can't be looked at as a unit-specific issue. Maybe it's got to be looked at as a building side. Maybe this is a process problem with DHCD by the nature of how bed bugs work in a large apartment building. But this is the most egregious in the district. It's like one of 3 that I've experienced this in. We've got a decent number of these types of buildings being the greater downtown area. So this is I will be following up on this. The other portion, and we'll count this as my second question, but.
I have a follow-up real quick. I just have a follow-up question
Please,
real
yeah.
quick. Councilman, you had said that there are 0 violations that are listed on the code map for this property?
Correct.
So how does that work? If there are 83 311 calls and inspectors have been out, is that correct?
I'm sorry, there are 0 listed for the bed bugs of the 30.
Oh, okay, for bed bugs, but there are violations listed for other items.
Yep, there was an open violation for the elevator when its rental license was renewed last Thursday or Friday.
So there was still a violation in the system and the renewal still happened? Because that's not supposed to happen.
Correct. You beat me to the punch for my second question.
I'm so sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. And so based on correspondence with DHCD, so that the building's rental license was reinstated for 2 years on December 11th, despite the open violation on the building. Based on correspondence with DHCD, an inspector did not visit the property to confirm the status of the elevator repair and instead called the property manager. I have requested the inspection report. I have not seen it yet. While I acknowledge that you have issued a letter with intention to revoke that license, we should have never gotten to this point. Here's why this particularly matters with tenants, right? Because we have tenants that are interested in going through, pursuing their different means through rent escrow and whatnot, which they have protections for when there's not a license on the building. Now there's a license on the building. And so we're worried that we have an issue giving them the violations they deserve as a property manager. And then with the ones that they already have, we've then given them the license, which puts the tenants in a really bad position here. So,
So Councilman,
How does that work? Why is that happening?
So, Councilman, I've been having this conversation with colleagues who are representing tenants, I think we need to have a conversation with the chief judge about when people are out of compliance with their actual rental license, so that we are issuing judgments in the opposite direction. So if I paid you rent from August to now, and you do not have a rental license, I think we need the court to start issuing judgments for tenants, saying I owe you your rent back, so that property owners are feeling it, because otherwise than that, people are gonna still be out of compliance. And I think that's the only way we're gonna force people to take it seriously. But also, I think there's a very strong conversation that we need to have about the rental licensing law. I think we need to update it so that we're very clear about who does inspections. Because if I'm paying you $3,000 to do an inspection, I'm gonna take you to the creme de la creme of my building and show you what the best looks like, so that you don't go to what the worst looks like and I can get my rental inspection. So I think we need to have a conversation about what that looks like, and that's why I support Councilwoman Ramos' bill about checking. But more broadly, I think we have to go back to changing that law so that we require you may have your initial through a third-party person, but we may come in at any time and re-inspect just in case to ensure if we have complaints. Because we're seeing the same recurring problem. I had the same issue with an elevator at 727 Drew Park Lake Drive. For those who know Lakeview Towers, we had a weekly meeting with the ownership, HABC, DCHD, my staff, the tenant council president and tenants, and we had to do it for 2 years until they fixed the elevator, and we're about to start it up again because the elevators are down again. So I think we need to have those conversations, but also think more strategically about changing operations to address it.
So I'll cut to thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. To cut into the question on it, we don't have that many, I mean, we have a lot of buildings that are 100, 200, 300 units, but like relative to the number of buildings you have in the city, it's not that many, right? It's not 12,000. What is going on sort of structurally that we can't get a hold of these types of situations with recurring issues that we're getting documented through one request, with council members advocating for it, tenants are organized, and we can't get a hold of this? What do we need to do to fix this?
Well, there was a council bill passed last year that goes into effect January 1st, the Strengthening Renters Safety Act. So we've been working on the implementation of that. To summarize that bill, rental properties that have 20 or more units are subject to what's referred to as the priority dwelling category. So any property that has 20 or more units has the potential of being flagged as a priority dwelling unit or building for additional inspections. There is a qualification table there to put that property into that priority dwelling status, and it's based off number of units and 311 calls, violation notices that haven't been abated. I believe it's within 90 days, or the number of violations over the course of the prior 12 months, or the Inspire score, which is if it's a HUD-funded building, the score that the federal government gives it when it's scoring. So I believe if it has to be above, if it's below a 79 or below, then that would be one of the criteria. So if you meet two of those criteria, you would be considered one of those priority dwellings. It opens you up to additional citations when Chief Booker's property maintenance inspectors go out. If they see situations, they can issue citations in addition to the notice for those, and they're a higher fine. There are random inspections that the inspectors would be doing on those properties. The top 20 properties in there, we would meet with and require them to provide us with a maintenance plan and explain how they're going to address the reoccurring problems that we're seeing at that property. We have to publish that list on the website, and it's maintained for 5 years. So even if you abate all your violations and you come off after your first year, there's still a record that you were on there for 2026. So that's goes into effect January 1st. We would pull the data to identify those properties. And then by the end of January, notice those, send them letters, letting them know that they've been identified as one of these properties, and then begin that process.
Okay, well, I look forward to learning more about that. Obviously, I've got a good candidate for that list. And I'll just end by saying, as a reminder, the bed bug situation is broken. It like, if you've ever had bed, like it sucks. It's really miserable for those residents. So
Absolutely.
we need to fix that part of the system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Question as a follow-up, are we charging an assessment for those re-inspections? Because that's time, right?
It's my bill.
I just want to make sure that we're charging an assessment because I firmly believe the rental law that we pass for rental licensing is flawed, right? If only half of the people who rent properties in the city actually are registered.
Less.
Well, I was being generous because it's close to Christmas. I think we need to really start thinking about an assessment as we're looking to next year's revenue to actually institute that fee now and that fee schedule. So we have that lined up as a citation right now before we even pass your law so we can start citing people. Because if this is a recurring problem, that's a revenue source that we can keep. And I've learned one thing about economics and markets. People will change, behavior change when finances are attached to it. And sometimes we just can't gently say, please fix this thing. Every time one of us come out, we need to assign a nice assessment. $5,000 feels like a beautiful number,
We're
just to
not allowed to
suggest
go
it.
more than that.
Councilman Jones?
Can I just follow up real quick? Yeah. Councilman, so in my bill, which builds on the Renter Safety Act, we do have that reinspection amount. We also have instituted, and DHCD has agreed to doing random audits from 100 to 200 audits a year, which, you know, that's not just the computer side, that's also inspections. And we have a lot more teeth in the bill. I don't want to have the hearing on it today because we are going to go through that at some point. But also it's a priority, and I'll be asking you for hearings very, very shortly because we want to actually get this done. We've been talking with the administration. We want to get this done first quarter and passed and out the door. So because we have a lot of things in my bill that need to be done to help with the system.
Thank you, and I will send you a date today.
Go for it.
Councilman Jones?
Yes, just wanted to get a little more information regarding the illegal dumping cameras. Just because illegal dumping is something I've, often come across within the district. I think I've never yet seen a camera get installed. Like, how many cameras are available to be put up for this illegal dumping? Kind of like, what are the requirements? I know you mentioned what would be a good candidate for it, but like how difficult or how simple it is to get one in a location. It seemed to be pretty much impossible when asked.
Sure. There are currently 99 cameras, couple different types. Most of them are what would be referred to as a trail camera. So all the cameras are taking either digital photo or video snippets based off of motion. And so they work best in areas where there's lower, what I would say is legal traffic. So putting them on a street corner outside of City Hall, it's not going to be very effective because it's, the cars are going past, people are going past, doing nothing illegal. The camera's going to fill up because it has a card, SD card, and batteries in most cases. In some cases, it's solar powered. So the camera's going to die because it's so much activity that it keeps activating, or the card's going to fill up before you actually catch the person dumping. So the cameras are most effective in those areas where there's less traffic, where people like to dump because there's less traffic, and where we can get a good, clean image of the license plate usually, or some other identifying factor on a vehicle. Just getting the image of a person in themselves generally is not going to be enough because then you got to identify them out of all the other people that it possibly could be. But having a license plate and then also an image of them gives you some grounds to begin to track down that person. So it's not just having the cameras, you've got to work the cameras. So we go out to the sites, we look to see if dumping has occurred, we download the images, we go through the dumping to get additional evidence of where it came from, who might have dumped it, put that together with the images that come off the camera, follow up. Many times the person that owns the vehicle is not necessarily the person who dumped it, so then you have to work through that of trying to identify who actually was driving the vehicle that day. And then interviewing them. In many cases, when we get to the actual interview of the person that dumped, and they're presented with the photographic evidence, they usually admit it. Occasionally, some of them want to go out and clean it up or something else, but in those cases where we've got good evidence, that's where we would file a criminal charge. We need a place to put the camera, so we put them up on city property where they're less likely to get damaged or stolen. So they may be in areas that you've driven past and you just haven't seen them, because we want people not to see them. We want people to get caught on camera dumping so that we can then deal with it that way. Is that,
Got it. Yeah, that's good. One other follow-up question. Does it need to be connected to a power source in order for it's battery powered already?
yeah, most of the cameras are battery powered. Some of them are battery and solar powered.
Okay. Got it.
To hardwire them on city property is very expensive. We have
No,
to,
that's fine. I guess my other follow-up question regarding this topic is, I know you mentioned there's 99 cameras or about 90 cameras. Are all 90 deployed currently? And if there was a request for a camera to be installed, approximately how long does that take in order to make sure that happens?
Yep. I think we have 9 or 10 that are not currently deployed. And it usually takes us a week or two. We have to evaluate the site, and then it depends on if there's something to attach the camera there and if it would work well there. In some situations where council or community have asked for a camera and we've gone out and the site doesn't lend itself to a camera, the investigator's next job is to really look at that area and see what, if any, defensive measures might be instituted. So it might be getting a fence put up or Jersey barriers put in, signage, although the no dumping signs, I don't believe actually work, because we find a lot of cases where people have dumped right in front of those signs or, but that's one route to go. Increased lighting. We also, in some cases, we're dealing with private entities, apartment complexes, property homeowners. And in those cases, we won't put a city camera on their property, but we will make recommendations to them of what they might be able to do, particularly apartment complexes, of relocating their dumpsters, fencing them in, educating their tenant population to make sure that they understand, or their maintenance staff population, depending on who's putting the trash in those dumpsters. We know that trash attracts trash, so.
Got it. And if a resident has their own personal camera up, has footage of someone illegal dumping and has the license plate and everything else necessary, is that, will you all take that information and pursue?
Yes, we do. Yep, if they provide that information in the 311 that they've, and a way of contacting them, whether email or phone, the investigator will contact them, come out to them, get a copy of the footage that they can then use. And if it's good, clear enough that we can establish a case, then we will prosecute.
Great, because I would say I think a greater deterrent than having a no dumping sign and having a well-lit area is actually prosecuting some folks who are illegal dumping, because I find it's a lot often the same people over and over and over doing it, who feel like they'll never get caught, feel like, there's not something that they have to worry about. And until we start putting in the extra effort to actually prosecute some of these folks, or at least find them and, hold them accountable, people won't feel as comfortable doing it. And just last follow-up for clarification, when it comes.
You are now on the
right.
fourth question.
It was a follow-up question. It was just all right, this is a quick yes or no, Mr. Chair. The graffiti, does that also fall under your purview? Just curious.
That falls under the property maintenance division.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing me to participate in the hearing today. I want to talk about two things I think probably on the property side here. One is, I know we've had a lot of conversation with DHCD inspectors and inspection leadership over the last few months around situations where a neighbor or a resident has submitted photos and a 311 report, usually for issues in a backyard or some other outdoor space, oftentimes dumping, or maybe it's rat droppings, pet droppings, things like that. An inspector comes out and can't physically see because of fencing in the back or some other visible obstruction, can't actually see in, and so often wind up closing it for lack of information. Whereas a follow-up with the resident who, because of where they happen to live, has a perspective on that property into that backyard space or side yard space, would have allowed for the inspector to have access to that space and visually confirm the report that was given, that was submitted in 311 by being in the same site. And so we've been able to follow up and kind of on the back end circle back to closed reports and have an inspector come back out, make contact with the person who filed the 311 complaint, and then be able to obtain the information necessary to do that. Given that that's a lot of extra work involved, is there a part of the standard process for property inspection for something like that where a contact is made? We just talked about illegal dumping videos that like an inspector will follow up to access that information. Is any part of the process I couldn't visibly see what was on this report that was submitted, therefore my next step is to call or email or contact the person who submitted it to obtain information that would be actionable?
So yeah, thank you for that. The answer is yes. Usually if there is a number supplied, they will. But if they can't see it, they can't cite it. I think you know that because they have to testify in court to what they saw. But usually if there's a number, they'll make contact and try to get to the violation.
At what point in the process will that phone call be triggered? So let's say they came out, they couldn't see, do they immediately call while they're standing there, or is it something that happens after they've closed it? Just at what point does that happen?
Yeah, it probably would happen after they got back to the office, because they probably try, it all depends on the inspector. If they try to complete their run, depending upon what's on their run, they may do it when they get back to the office. They may try to make that call while they're in the field. It depends on what their load is that morning when they hit it. So that's at the inspector's discretion.
I appreciate that. I wonder if there's a way to ask the person making a 311 complaint whether it is visible from a public space, public right-of-way or not, and therefore the inspector would know prior to them going out to stand behind a fence they can't see over, they would have the information to be able to institute that step at the front end.
Sure, that could probably be a part of the flex questions when it's being called in through 311.
Great.
It's already there? Okay, it's already present in the flex questions.
So if that person said it's not, if they answered in the negative, like you wouldn't be able to see it from the alley, that then would trigger right away a phone call?
Yes, as long as the phone number is there.
Okay,
Ideally,
great.
yes.
I appreciate that. The other question I have, there's been a number of times where, and I don't think it's SIU, I think it's property, but where folks have called in with, I'm sure this is true in other districts, folks have reported to you all and then followed up with us around significant concerns about the safety of the structure next to them, particularly in row house neighborhoods where the structures are all, connected. is there I know it gets tricky because oftentimes our inspectors are looking from the outside, and problems with caved-in roofs, for example, or internal damage or shifting or walls inside that are not structurally sound may not be visible from the exterior of a building, but sometimes they are. And so I'm curious, when there are significant concerns about the stability and safety of a building, how are those handled, and what are the opportunities to more aggressively or proactively verify safety?
Sure. I think that initially it would probably fall in the property maintenance bucket. Property maintenance, identifying structural integrity items are not something that's in the skill set of the property maintenance inspector. So they will come and see it. If it's beyond them, they would refer it to code enforcement building inspector for their attention, for their expertise.
And that's part of SIU?
Well, it's under permits and litigation, but it's not part of SIU.
Okay.
So the construction building inspector goes out on those inspections, determine if the building's structurally stable or not. If there are people present there, they'll try to make contact with them immediately to see what's going on. In some cases, it's a site that's under construction. Other cases, it's a vacant building that's, nobody's anywhere to be found. If the building's not already condemned, they would condemn the building and document it. If they believe that there is potential threat to the public, they'll contact the demolition division and have a demolition inspector come out to evaluate the property. And at that point, we make a decision as to whether or not the property is an imminent threat to the public. If it is, that is when our inspectors are then calling our contractors out to either stabilize the structure or a portion of the structure, or remove a portion of the structure, or demolish the structure entirely. And it does depend on what the situation is. So sometimes we do, remove a porch roof, or remove an oriel, or a hanging cornice, or something rather minor. And in other cases, we may be putting up braces on a building, particularly if it's historic or some other can be saved. We believe it can be saved, but it is presenting a threat. And then, unfortunately, sometimes we have to take buildings down. Yeah. So, and the demolition division is, when they're engaged, that's emergency work. There's also planned work. So in some cases, the inspectors will see it and say, it's not an imminent threat right now. However, we should get this in the plan pipeline. In that case, we would send out notice saying we intend to do this work. So we do due process on the property. We do an investigation to see everybody that has an interest in the property, and we let them know we intend to do something, whether it's demo or stabilize. And that, in many cases, in some cases, I would say, brings the owner or some other interested party in the property out to say, oh, city, I'll take care of it. And then we follow up with them on that, make sure they get the permits and do it. Or nobody is able to do it, or willing to do it, or even there to do it, and then we would do the work.
Gotcha. Sorry, I saw Scott had his, I really appreciate the responses there, Mr. Hessler and Mr. Booker on that front. I've been involved in a situation that went all the way through the process and resulted in a partial demolition and kind of securing of the property. And so it took time, but it was thorough and people were responsive, and DHC did a really good job. I have a fresh one in front of me that the concerns very much were reported as structural, like collapsing roof and water penetrating into the building and seemingly visible shifting. And I think probably because it was a property inspector that came out to do that initial response, the violation notice had to do with high grass and weeds, which I'm sure were also present, and we appreciate the thoroughness there. But the resident was like, wait a second, thank you, but also I'm worried that the house next to me is gonna collapse, or that I'll be unable to sell my property. And so, so we followed up, and I expect then we'll start moving this direction as well to make sure that side of it is also considered. So I really appreciate the explanation.
And just as a note, so the building inspectors that Deputy Commissioner Hessler referred to those are the same inspectors that carry out inspections related to the permitting process.
Thank you. So I want to follow up to because I'm canceling the vacant structures and lots hearing on the 22nd, gift to you guys because I'm not going to be here for Christmas. I asked for an SOP. What I got was a publicly available chart as well as step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That is wholeheartedly unacceptable. I'm just be transparent, right? As someone who's worked in large organizations who's had to draft SOPs, I want to know the first and last name, the title, the agency, their phone number, and their email for each step of the way, whether it goes from whether it's the superintendent on the property maintenance side of it first and what they're processing for their person, and then giving us a list of who is the staff available, and then going down to who in the legal division is making the referral, and if they're kicking it back to the property maintenance person. Because for the last 4 years, I've been in limbo in the Parkway community. Councilwoman Middleton's been in limbo in several neighborhoods in Park Heights. Councilman Gray has been in limbo in the 8th District over off Allendale. Councilman Bullock has the same issue. I believe Councilman Blanchard has issue with vacant garages. I just want to level set with agency leadership in this meeting. An SOP is not something that is ChatGPT generated, that is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. An SOP is very clearly defining who has a responsibility, which office has a responsibility, which person in that office has that responsibility. I cannot follow that flow, right? And I say that as someone who's systems oriented, that was not it. So I want to know, when the request was made at the hearing, it took 6 weeks to receive that same SOP on December 5th. I received it on December 9th, after it gone through multiple eyes at the agency and as well as the mayor's office. My question is, and this has not been answered by staff, why was it delayed? Because that's not an SOP. Was this created in response to my question and it was not documented, or was this something that you had existing? And I believe that's a very fair question in this hearing.
As to the garages, it's something that's been created. It didn't exist as an SOP previously.
So I just want to be clear, at the hearing, the agency leadership said there was an SOP.
I don't recall that.
It was said that there was an SOP. So this SOP was created.
Well, I believe it was created before the last hearing, because that was the second question.
No, we were
I'll have to
told
go
that
back
there
and
was an
look.
SOP that existed, and that, and unless you misspoke, you said that was created, just created. So I just want to be clear, because what I saw was what an intern or your legislative staff could have just put together in like 5 minutes. And I'm trying to be fair with you guys tonight. And I just want to be clear that the expectation was an SOP. I got a one-page document with step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Tony, I'm actually going to forward it to you, and we're going to publish it on the website for the public to see it.
Mr. Chair, I think what we can do is, where there's a disconnect here, there's a definition of SOP that you're looking for, and I understand it coming from a similar background. And I think that when we talk SOPs in government right now, there are different definitions of what should be in it. So I think it would be good if you and I have a conversation maybe after this, and we can define what that definition of a SOP should be. And then where there are SOPs that we've given you that don't fit that criteria, I can work with the team and we can update those SOPs that have that information.
So I would like before Christmas an SOP, because the agency had enough time.
Right, so-
And I specified in the email to the agency leadership with MOGR copied what I wanted in that SOP. Tony can confirm it and I'll forward it to you. I was very clear about what it looked like and what I expected. As someone who worked in city government and created a similar SOP before, the AMP manual actually has what an SOP is supposed to be. And that is why most of our A&P manual has a specified person in the agency in it. As someone who has had to review it in this position before, it's actually in there. So there's a standard in there in the government for it already. It just was not appealed to or adhered to.
Well, do you mind sharing that with me? And then I can follow up with the team.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple more questions.
I have one more.
Okay.
In terms of legal dumping, I would like to know the total number of cases that we have actually filed and where they actually are in terms of adjudication. That would be a committee request, Tony. Illegal dumping, how many cases have we had? How many we filed a legal notice against, and how many people have been prosecuted, and the amount of funds that have been recovered from it? I just want to make sure so that when I do have the next hearing, that we understand where we are. And now, Council Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did we ever get an answer to Councilman Blanchard's question about, or maybe it was our both question about how it is at all possible that a building or a property would get a license when there are violations on it?
Yep. Yeah, that should not happen. I looked into the one that Councilman Blanchard brought up with the supervisor, and he talked with the staff about it. And that property had been being worked on by a staff member for multiple days, because not only when they initially applied, there was an outstanding balance that they had to pay. And so there were a lot of emails back and forth clarifying that over several days. And then when they finally paid, that's when the staff member went ahead and processed the license. In between the start of those conversations and when the staff member issued the license is when that notice was issued. So they had checked the records. There was no flag in the system at that point. And so then they didn't go back to double check that. As soon as it was brought to our attention, we went through and reviewed all that. And the revocation process was initiated. So that requires a notice to go out, giving them 10 days, and then the license can be revoked. In this case, it would be revoked back to as if it never existed, because it shouldn't have been issued. So that's the process that's in place.
So just as a follow-up to that, it's, this particular building sounds like it's had multiple challenges a lot. And I think that was kind of the point of then Councilman, now Council President's bill, which was to just say, if this has multiple violations, they're a priority dwelling, and they should be flagged not just for multiple inspections, but to say like, okay, they're asking for renewal, let's check the record, let's do that, you know what I mean? Like having that additional check is going to be important, because it was clear that this building is multiple violations, so probably shouldn't have gotten a license anyway. And I'm all for giving, it should be something where there's time frame and track record and all of that. I mean, I get that once everything's cleared, we want to go ahead and have them, licensed, but it definitely sounds like this one was one of our egregious violators that we need to prioritize, basically, for more inspections. So thanks for that explanation. I had a totally separate question about the organization chart for property management. There's a section here around the Assistant Commissioner for Human Services and Emergency Management. And that these are our building code folks that come out to fires. Who are our friends here? You need to put the microphone on.
Bam. First, let me introduce you to Assistant Commissioner Nancy Goldring. She's right here. She's responsible for that section of the org chart, and Director Cheryl Grays over top of Special Operations. So on that side of the org chart, what that team does as a priority now is vacates of illegally occupied buildings. So they are coordinating with other agencies across the city so that they can do these vacates every week. I think 160 for this year, 160 vacates this year. So attached
This
to
calendar year or fiscal year?
Calendar year.
Year to date, okay.
Calendar year. Also with that special ops team, there is an ombudsman's team, because when they go out to do these vacates, they often come in contact with somebody that's in the property. Then this is where some of that irate behavior can come from, some of the trauma stuff. So we have the ombudsman there to offer them services. A lot of times they say no, and they move on to the next building that they can occupy. So that side of the org chart. Also, during when the EOC is activated, that side of the org chart will staff the EOC. Usually is us three that'll staff the EOC in the event that DHCD is a part of the activation.
So that's really important, and I'm glad you're doing it. I had a related question or a follow-up question related to that. And I just had this discussion with the mayor's office and the Office of Homeless Services. I did not realize that the point-in-time count does not actually include folks that are in vacant properties, even though they're considered not, that they are not housed, And so want to figure out how we can incorporate the 311 data that you have, that then, you have you get the 311, that there's somebody in there, you knock on the door, you try to figure out what's going on. You might have to go back a few times. Because I know from talking with some folks who had told me that they were living in a place that they, they're not there during the day, they only go at night, so you have to go at certain times. But I want to integrate that kind of data into the point in time. I know the point in time is federally mandated, and they're only required to do outdoor and couch surfing and that kind of thing. I just think that's not an accurate number. And so hopefully we can work together on getting an accurate count of who is experiencing homelessness. Because we're also doing the point in time count in January, which makes zero sense to me, because that means people are actually finding, some place to be in the cold weather. So we are not getting an accurate count of who is experiencing homelessness. So we'll have to figure out kind of how that data can integrate. I mean, obviously you're doing emergency vacates, but that person hopefully you track a little bit to find, I mean, it's kind of hard if people don't have phones, I get that, but there's areas generally that folks might hang out in, so that we can at least get a sense of what resources we were offering them. Was there a partnership with MOHS? How does that actually work, so that we're making sure that they're actually getting the resources that they need, as opposed to just kicking them out of this place that they shouldn't be in?
Sure. And I can tell you that that special ops team and that whole section, they conduct an investigation. To your point, person might not be there. But they'll go and they'll conduct the investigation, because sometimes there's drug activity, everything that comes with being a part of Baltimore in some neighborhoods. So they conduct that. They get a list if people want to communicate their information to them. They'll take their names and try to offer them services. But more often than not, they say, no, I'm good, and I'll see you at the next one.
Are they just in vacant properties, or are we seeing also properties that are just empty because we haven't marked them as VBNs, which is an issue? I'm sorry, what was your question? Sure. Hit the button. Yep, there you go. Nice to meet you. Is it just vacants within vacant building notice and codex properties, or is it anything that somebody says, hey, this is an unoccupied house, it's been empty for a long time, but there's now somebody in it that we think doesn't, the neighbor says, hey, they don't belong there?
So you said your question was, are we seeing people that were just at the vacant vacates?
No, I'm asking, are you only getting calls and taking action on vacant and abandoned property, getting people out of vacant properties that are designated vacant, or are you also adding properties where it may be empty, but hasn't been designated as a
Right.
VBN property.
Primarily vacants.
Yes.
Primarily
vacants,
VBNs,
but-
okay.
But not necessarily only vacants. Okay, so it could be a property that has been unoccupied, but somebody says somebody's in there. So then there's an inspection that's conducted just to see what the condition of that property is from a property maintenance standpoint, to see what actions we can take from our space, because maybe it needs to be a vacant. It doesn't have.
Yes, it likely does.
Right, if it doesn't have utilities, it doesn't have running water, you know, there are things that a habitable house should have in order for it to be, have an occupancy certificate. So if it doesn't have some of those things, we can back into a vacant building notice. So we don't ignore those requests that come to us, but primarily is stuff that already has a vacant building notice on it.
Can we get, as a data request, that breakdown of the 160 vacates, whether it was all vacant building notices, and which ones were just the, what I will call nuisance properties? You know, just to get a sense of what we're looking at.
Sure.
And I would
Thank you.
add to that city versus privately owned, because you ladies do yeoman's work, because you've helped me with Parkview Recreation Center when we had 45 people living in Westside Elementary School and had power and electricity and water, and they just took over like it was an apartment building. And then you've helped me with the properties that are facing Cab Callaway Park when we had, out of the 17 properties, 8 of them were occupied with people. And I will say that the assistance that you provided in the level of care, even with the 10-day notice that you provided them, showed me that you guys have a humanity to you that recognizes their issues. Because we successfully got those people out there without a problem, but we also got them places to go for housing. We got them connected to employment resources. So I just want to commend you, because that's a hard population to help, especially when they've become accustomed to living in somewhere for free.
Are we working with the crisis services team too, which I'm a big fan of, because they also have the access to hotel rooms and, They're not the same people.
Crisis is not the same people.
Right,
You're
that's what I'm
absolutely
saying.
right.
No.
Say
No.
that again?
Nope.
No. So they're
That's
under
kind of where my
Nicole
question's
Hart.
coming from.
So Deputy Commissioner Hart has a crisis response team. Those are the people that go out to fires and emergencies of that nature. We focus on the vacate population. However, we do have a relationship/partnership with Nicole Hart's crisis team, because they have the budget that handles emergency relocation. So if we encounter someone in a vacant structure, who oftentimes you'll find people who are there because they're a victim of scam rental. So these are people who are actually paying rent.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they
we have that scam. It's horrible.
Yeah, they're paying rent, they have an income, and they're just unaware. Number one, they weren't aware of the situation that they're currently in. And then you have other people that are unaware of the breadth of services that the city provides. So our ombudsman team collects that information, contact information, employment, earnings, and we report all that back. We triage the situation and report all that back to Deputy Commissioner Hart. And she oftentimes, I can't think of a time when she hasn't been able to support, to get a family to safety.
Oh, yeah, no, that team is wonderful.
Yes.
And with Director Manigo and the whole team.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate that this unit was created. I guess I'm a little confused as to one of the things that we've been told is that if it's, the priority is really on the vacants to avoid fires and things like that. But also, usually it is the owner's responsibility to file a wrongful detainer to get folks out. Now, that takes a while. So is the team trying to offer services while that process is happening for the ones that are not VBN vacants? While you're trying to reach the owner? I have a lot of questions about this. Maybe we need to have an offline conversation.
Yes, so in the beginning of the process, we attempt to contact the owner, and a lot of them may have a situation where it's in court.
Already.
But it depends on the situation. If it's a situation where we know fire's been set there or something recent's been happened, we may have to take our step, which is to offer them the help. And we're not talking about people who were put in the property by the owner. We're talking about actually unhoused people who have broken in the house,
Right.
that type of situation. So the ombudsman go out with us during the entire process, and even without us, all the way up to the vacate date. And they may run into all kinds of situations. So whatever we see out there, for example, today we had a vacate and there was an encampment in the alley. They had a fire going, a fire pit, so we had to call the fire department because they had put a tarp over top of it, and the tarp was burning. So what I'm saying, we go out and these guys are vigilant to everything. It's not just we're going and putting a posting on. It's what we're seeing, and we're gonna whatever the situation is, they're gonna report back to what agency it needs to go to, and that's all put in our document as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Great, I'll probably follow up with
I
you.
want to add that this is part of that senior inspector space as well, when we talked about what's the difference between a junior inspector and a senior inspector. This is a team of senior inspectors with one junior inspector on that team, because the situations, they can go anywhere. They're looking at everything, not just, as she said, posting a notice and getting somebody out. They're looking at the whole environmental picture to try to solve that problem and get people to safety.
Thank you. I have one more question, but I don't know. You want to wait for everybody? Maybe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Madam Vice Chair. So going back to the Deputy Commissioner Hessler's point about your optimism with the Strengthening Renter Safety Act coming into effect in January, something that, when I was thinking through it, something that makes me less optimistic is my understanding is it still depends largely on the violations being issued, and right, like the blocking and tackling on the code enforcement side on the front end, right?
It's, I believe, without it in front of me, I'm going off memory, it's, I believe, 5 things. So it's,
So either way,
it's length of notice, how many notices, so it is 311 calls as well, but there's like a chart
factors into it somehow.
equation that,
Okay.
how many units,
Yeah.
you know, the Inspire score, and I feel like I'm missing something, but
Either way, so
it's
there's
not
a couple
just
things that
notices.
go into it. Good to note, but I think kind of the bigger point, another property in the district that we've had some recurring issues with, there's been 3 days in 22, 24, and 25 when the same inspector came out and inspected more than 60 homes in one day, which is like 8 minutes per home. If you break it on an 8-hour workday or whatever, that feels like a really fast pace. We spoke to a couple tenants who did not recall them being there, right? And that's you know, we weren't able to confirm that, but I have a lot of concerns about like how do we quality control the inspections? And I know that was alluded to in the Chief of Staff's kind of overview talk, but I'm not confident that all the inspections are happening the way they should be happening.
Can I, yeah, I believe you're referencing the third-party inspections that are occurring for the rental license, is that correct? Okay. Yep, so working with,
So this ties into your bill.
yeah, there's some changes to that that will reinforce the quality control pieces around third-party inspections.
Can you elaborate on that?
Can I have the
Sure,
council?
sure.
Yeah. It's her bill, so I don't want to steal her thunder.
Yeah, no, it's something that we worked on. We've been working on this bill for a long time. So one of the things that the advocates had pointed out is that often the landlords are using the same person, and so.
That's the case
That
in-
is the
in this,
case,
yeah.
yep. So what my bill does is that as a requirement, the landlord cannot use the same third-party inspector per property, not dwelling, per property, for each of the next renewal periods up until after the fourth one, right? So we're gonna start doing renewal periods every 2 years, okay? And so you can use one that first year, you can't use them again for the next 3 inspections, next 3 renewals. Then the second one, you can't use it again, you can't use, you know what I mean? So it's just not the same person the entire time.
Yeah, all right, that's a good start to that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jones?
Yes. Just trying to get clarification on the process. You know, when you look up certain properties and you see a property has what they look like, say, a vacant notice, I guess a notice to abate. I guess that's not officially a VBN, is it? And at what point? So at that point, it is a VBN. And as long as they don't, and how long does it take once that notice that says this has been a vacant property, you have a certain amount of days to abate or fix these and secure the property, does an actual citation like follow up?
Okay, so the language in the notice is standard. I think all the language says 30 days, which is usually unrealistic when it comes to a vacant building, but that's standard language that's in the notice. As we continue to inspect our vacant buildings, we move to the FTA citation, about third inspection. The third inspection of that vacant building notice, if it's still vacant, we don't have contact, we move to the FTA, failure to abate citation.
Okay. And I guess after the third, about how frequent, so every 30 days, someone should come out and take it to the second so it can get to the third, or what does that kind of look like?
I wouldn't commit to every 30
Okay.
days, right? I would say that somewhere within the 90-day period. Because on all vacant buildings, we try to get to all vacant buildings that's in our inventory at least 4 times a year. Okay, so I would say within a 90-day. Privately owned, yes, that's for the record, right, for the record. All vacant properties that we have a notice on that are in the city, we try to get to them at least 4 times a year. Some more than others, So usually around the third inspection, there's a failure to abate citation.
And I guess if there is that notice to abate given and someone eventually just requests permits for work to be done, I guess that then kind of checks the mark so that it doesn't get a second round or second inspection. Does that happen? Is that, would that cause it to happen if someone just starts pulling permits but never do the work yet?
Well, yeah, well, there's a window, because we try to work with people so that we can, get it back into habitable use.
Yes.
And people will pull permits, and yeah, they will play those games. But eventually, the inspector sees that they're playing those games, and they'll issue the next failure to abate citation. And we know that they're playing games at some point, because we can't keep re-inspecting something and you keep telling me I'm doing work, but you haven't called for one inspection, but you got a permit. Right?
Exactly.
So we're aware of those games, and we take action accordingly, depending upon the situation.
Okay, cool. No, thank you, because that's kind of one hiccup I think I'm starting to see when a notice comes out. Someone may request permits but never follow up on the work, so.
Yeah, so when a vacant building notice, that notice will remain on the property until it is either receives a use and occupancy permit, because they have renovated it with permits, or they have done a permitted demolition. And so as DC Booker was saying, we can then, if we make contact and, the goal ultimately is to get these properties habitable again. And so we want to work with people who are going to do the work. So yes, when people have pulled permits, we generally do not initially issue another FTA. However, as the DC said, we know that there are people that, you know, play the game. And so those individuals, you know, the inspectors, you know, take that into account. Also, for properties like that, once it has the VBN, we are also looking internally with our team and, you know, is this on one of the priority blocks that we are focused on for a whole block outcome? Is this a property that, you know, qualifies for in-rem to acquire the property? Is this a candidate for receivership? And so the code enforcement team then is really working in concert with our other teams to, you know, at a certain point that, you know, additional FTAs may not be what gets people to act, but taking them to receivership, you know, finally is the kick in the pants some people need.
Okay. No, thank you. And just last thing about the graffiti. It's a issue we have in the city, really quick. And just want to hear about your plans on addressing it, because I guess often the way the process works is, I guess there is graffiti on someone's wall, and often where kind of feels like, as I'm talking to residents, finding the victim in some sense. I know we're always talking about find more people, write more citations, but is there another process around it or to kind of slow things up? Because as I get phone calls from residents, it's like, I didn't put the graffiti on my wall, but I'm constantly, you know, and even as I take it down, someone else comes back and put it back up, and now I'm threatened with the citation on getting it done. It doesn't necessarily always seem fair to the resident, but I hear that there is also an abatement program to help remove some of that graffiti and whether or not it still exists and how it's deployed.
So I just want to say that we are very sensitive to people who are the victims of the street artists, if you will. It is not our intention to punish them, although that's what the notice process says, that, you know, it's on your property, you need to remove it. And we agree with you that a lot of times it's just erasing the chalkboard for something new to be put up. So what we have been doing is we've been having some conversations with the graffiti task force as we work through this process. I yield and let DC Hessler pick up with the task force.
Yeah, the mayor's office has established a graffiti task force. And it started over a year ago, had some traction, and then kind of got reformulated recently. So they've been meeting every couple weeks, and it's 4 or 5 prongs. I don't have that in front of me either, but there's 4 or 5 prongs to it. One of them is enforcement, changes to legislation, safe spaces, like Graffiti Alley, to use that, looking at legislative changes, repurposing, or I'm sorry, not repurposing, but offering training or other skill to get people from doing that and applying the trade in a more productive way. So that work is going on, and I would stress that, as Chief Booker said, we don't issue citations for graffiti, which would be like, property owner, you now have to pay a fine immediately. We issue violation notices where it's necessary. And the abatement piece that you were talking about is through DPW. So for residential properties, they can go through 311 and sign a release and allow DPW to remove the graffiti, in addition to the removals that they do on the city properties around, and you know, the highways and byways and that kind of stuff.
But Councilman, I would caution, because removal could mean a couple of things, right? It could mean it gets power washed off or painted over. You know, one is worse than the other, I believe.
Question, and this is what I struggle with the agency. What is your communications department doing for communicating all these things, right? Because hearing it here, the general public doesn't know, right? So how are we innovatively using your communications department to communicate this? Because this is, organizationally, this is what we do, and this is what people think we do, right? I think we know what you do as elected officials, but the general public don't, right? So I think this may be a conversation with your communications officer, thinking about how do we creatively do it, because as soon as I love some of our social media influencers around the city. As soon as we get something wrong, it goes all viral, right? So why are we not using our communications team to reach out to them to educate the public in a non-traditional way? Because Fox 45, others, 13, everybody else is not going to do the work for us all the time. Then that's earned media. I think we really have to start looking at how do we educate people and meet them where they are, because no one knows why the random person with a DCHD code enforcement thing is walking down the street, because just being transparent with you, some of our neighborhood pharmacists may be thinking that you're about to call the police on them, just being transparent, right? Then there's the, oh, I cited you for your gutters. How do we educate people and say, hey, I'm blah, 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 code enforcement person, we cited you for your gutters, but let me tell you about my colleagues here at DCHC I can connect you with in home preservation, right? And connecting the dots, because not everyone is prepared to have those conversations and say, here's the menu options we have for you. And that's a capacity thing. So I think and this is for you, Tammy, thinking of a creative way to educate people on what your agency does. And I would like to see a plan on how we plan to engage the public differently. I know one thing my residents love was Coffee with Alice, because they get to show up and say what they really want to say. But also, how do we have those touch points that are non-traditional than Alice or the next commissioner just being available to them? How do we get out there and have those communication streams? Because honestly, I can send things to your legislative team, I can send it to a deputy commissioner. That means nothing for that person who's just interacting with the agency. And just being transparent with you, sometimes your numbers don't work, right? For your call centers. So that is a way that we educate people. And we help them through, because a lot of people don't fill out 311s because they don't feel like that thing's happening. So if we can have a video that walks them through what that 311 looks like, educate them along the way. And then for those who are too scared to report people, there's an anonymous option. Tell them how they can anonymously report people for the things or the issues that are happening in their neighborhood. Because it's gonna take a village, but also it's non-traditional educating people. So
Yeah,
that's committee requests.
we welcome the opportunity to spread the information of what we do and through.
Better yet, we'll make that as its own oversight here on traditional communication versus non-traditional communication for the agency. Thank you.
Just for my last two, first, well, I just need to follow up on the graffiti issue. It's my understanding the graffiti task force hasn't met in a while. Is that what they're, are they being reconstituted now? I was on it and I had asked the councilman to replace me because I just got a lot going on.
You and I were both originally on it.
Yeah.
And then I sent a second as well. That task force got reinvented, and I don't really know the ins and outs between that, but there is a new group that is meeting, and I want to say we met last week, and we've been meeting like every 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay,
so
well,
it's
we
been
want to
like-
make sure that one of us is included.
Yeah.
Is that, I thought that one of us was supposed to be included.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I'll follow up on that as far as the membership of the group and make sure that we bring a council member back into the conversation.
Yeah, that would be super helpful, because I also want to, make sure that, we've been talking about whether to have just one hearing just about the graffiti piece. But we would like to be partners in this, so we do want to be back involved. Thank you. So 2 totally separate questions. Deputy Commissioner, how many Spanish-speaking inspectors do you have? If you say 0, I'm going to flip my lid. You're going to tell me 0.
Not good Spanish. So the answer is a half of.
Okay, that has to change. That has to
Yes.
change immediately.
Yes.
Because we do have obviously our increasing
Yes,
population. We also have a population that's very scared, and they're going to see some official-looking person and think that they're somebody else. So that has to change immediately.
Agreed.
So we'll get a sense of, I know you're in the hiring process
Yes.
still.
Any help that we can get with somebody just getting in that pipeline, it would be fine if you know someone, because.
Yeah,
I
I'm
speak-
happy to be a partner in this, no
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah, because I speak Spanglish, so.
No, I get it. I mean, I get it, but it's still not, we need
Yes.
Also on the permit side, I do think we have one.
Yeah, you got a great window going on that
But we need
I
some
agree
on
with
the
that.
code enforcement,
I agree with that.
side as well.
agree
Okay.
with that.
So, I'll, help you with that, although I'm super not happy about, that.
Can we
this-
add that to the list of the handheld things that they need to have it do interpretation and speaking? Because we have money. We need to multitask, because I'm just being transparent with you. I think that we have to have Spanish speakers, but we also have to have a bridge until we get there. And I think we need to have that bridge too, right? The goal
Oh,
is to
yeah,
have
for
Spanish speakers,
sure.
but we
I
need
mean,
that
hopefully,
bridge
at
to-
least they're trained on language lines so they can at least call in and get a translator, which is required from the language access law. But, nothing beats having somebody who can actually relate to that person or family. So, yeah, thank you. And then totally unrelated question. I had a situation in my district where I guess the main theme here is that I think sometimes code enforcement between one neighborhood and another is inconsistent. I have a property that I complain about all the time. I'm not going to say what it is publicly because I don't want to have, some vultures come around. But all of you know which property it is because I talk about it all the time, that I cannot get a VBN on. It makes me insane. It is absolutely needs a VBN. It has been empty for a long time. Nobody is taking care of it except for the neighbors because they don't want it to look bad next to them. And then in another neighborhood, just 3 blocks up, is a property that looks exactly the same, and it has a VBN on it. So can you talk a little bit about how we're making sure that we're being consistent? Because it's 2 different inspection districts. So it's 2 different inspection districts. So how can we make sure that we're being consistent with, all of our inspectors as to what actually is happening? I need a VBN on this property.
Sure.
And it looks almost exactly the same as this other property in another neighborhood that doesn't have as many vacants. But it has a vacant building notice on it.
So, Councilwoman, the inspectors are guided by the building fine related codes of Baltimore City, right? So I would, with my team, look at the 2 that you're talking about, because one could have had a vacant building notice on it. It had to be something that triggered the vacant building notice. Usually it's open to casual entry, not fit for human habitation. So it's some things in the building fine related codes that speak to what gets issued a vacant building.
Neither of them have broken windows. Neither of them have broken doors or anything. It's just, it's starting to fall apart on both, but it's not open to casual entry. The falling apart side is the porches. One has a VBN and one doesn't.
Yeah.
And I'll send those addresses to you and we
Yeah.
can, take a look at it. But I want to just understand a little bit better about how we're making sure that we're double checking so that we are being consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to see those 2, because their choice when it's not a obvious vacant building is just to issue a property maintenance notice for whatever the violation is that they see. So they can go that route, or if it rises to the level and meets the criteria for vacant building notice, they'll issue the vacant building notice. So I like to take a look at those 2.
Sure, and you know me, I go in the alleys.
I know you do.
So I went around to the alley to see, what's happening with these properties. And so it's not like it's just looking at the front, it's like, so, but I do think that we want to get to this issue of, I don't want to be afraid of issuing VBNs. I
Gotcha.
know we want the number to go down, but the only way to take action on properties is to put a VBN on it. So I want to just make sure that we're being consistent when we're talking about the VBN.
Sure, maybe I can get those 2 after this.
I will, I'll send them to you. I'll send them to you. I'm gonna have to look and, yes, I'm not gonna say them publicly, but I will send them to you, yes. Well, in this case, I just don't want anybody to go in them because they hear it somewhere, or I don't want them, you know what I mean? I'm a little worried about that part from a residential side, but I'll go call out somebody who's, you know, a bad landlord, but I'm not gonna do it, you know, this way. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Jones, any? I have none either. Public testimony.
It's actually checked off, but Councilman Blanchard did have two people who he said who wanted to testify.
Okay. No one checked off public testimony. So if you're here and under the sound of my voice, like we're in church, please come forward and state your name and provide public testimony. You have 2 minutes.
Sure.
1 second, we're about to start the clock.
Hi, my name is Samantha Gowing. I'm an attorney at the Public Justice Center. I'm also involved in the Safe Homes Now Coalition. I just wanted to uplift a story like what Councilmember Blanchard shared today is very, very common. I've seen it in District 12, in District 7, in District 14, all across the city. Internally, we have a list of clients we've worked with, at least 50 examples of situations just like that, where properties are licensed, but they really should not be. The conditions are very, very hazardous. And so as we're looking at this, for example, I'm happy that DHCD has included a process for when tenants are living in properties that don't have a license, they can reach out to DHCD and DHCD can investigate that. But I think we really need to also look at properties where there is a license, but should there be? And there's a lot of evidence that there shouldn't be. So I think I would love to continue that conversation, investigations in those situations, because I really don't think we should congratulate ourselves on fewer unlicensed properties if those properties should not be licensed. So making sure the licensure process is not just a rubber stamp process. And the bill that Councilmember Ramos just introduced, 141, is getting at and making a lot of progress towards addressing those issues. And I was very happy to hear Councilmember Torrance that you'll be able to give a date for that hearing, possibly even tonight, because I think getting that done soon will be very important. Part of also what that bill is addressing is the issue, not just with the, what's happening with within the city, but with these third-party inspectors. And I think we need to put a lot of attention on that. But thank you so much for having this conversation, for having this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. You're next, sir. You have to say your first and last name.
My name is Kevin Randall. I'm a tenant council, I'm a tenant council president in Hanover Square Apartments at 1 West Conway Street. There's a total of 198 residents in that apartment building, and they're all seniors. Apparently, we've been having bed bug problems, roach infestation problems, and it seemed like it's an ongoing situation. Everybody's battling, trying to control it, and it's like nothing's being done. And it's like inspectors try to come out and inspect people's apartments. They can't get in the building. You call 311 to file a complaint. 311, they'll sit there and say, oh, we already got that, but I'll give you this work order number. I tell them, you request your own work order number, because everybody has a single voice. And something needs to be done. I mean, like the building has an expired license. What do we do as tenants paying our rent? We have no backbone or anything, saying we're giving Paul money and nothing's being done. What do we do in that case? Do we continue to pay the rent or what? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Deetrice Starridge. I'm with Baltimore Renters United. So as I listened to the presentation from DHCD, it seems to be like a repeat of presenting the same thing, but really with no solutions. So I understand when you all say like, that staff is like under constraints, no capacity, but I don't think that would have anything to do with the current inspectors that you all have doing their job efficiently and effectively. What the presentation showed is not what we're seeing on the ground. So like, for example, I believe it was a slide that all said that you all provided tenants resources, but tenants that we work with or have spoken to are not getting those resources, well, especially from DHCD. As it relates to violations and citations, tenants are often left in limbo. So like, for example, when a tenant puts in a 311 complaint, there's really no follow-up communication with them. And it's not as far as no status on their case, and we have to look online and see if their case was closed. So there's really no, I think it was Council Torrance was saying earlier, like the communication aspect of it, really no communication with tenants is like involved in their case. I'm also confused, and correct me if I misunderstood this, and well, my apologies in advance. I believe it was a slide that presented that say the external work, the conditions. It's hard for me to believe that when tenants put in, or anyone put in 301 request, their intent is to physically harm inspectors who's just following up on complaints and do their job. It seems like that's a narrative to shift blame to tenants or people who put in 311 requests. I also agree with Councilman Torrance and with the gentleman before me presented earlier about really hitting these bad actor landlords in their pockets, because they're laughing at the fines and things like that, wiping their behinds with it. They don't care. It seems like these fines don't faze them. So I personally believe that there needs to be reform of DHCD, and I think it would start if y'all would be open to listening to the community and the public on how we can work towards better solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your advocacy. Go ahead, ma'am. Come on up.
Okay. My name is Pamela Brown. I reside at Hanover Square Apartments, 1 West Conway Street. We have been dealing with bed bugs, roaches, mice, no hot water, no heat. We had a trash chute. Our trash chute broke, so we had a dumpster out for like over 2 months. We didn't have hot water to wash clothes for over 2 months. Started off with the bed bug situation in January of 25. Called 311, and a young lady by the name of Triana Bell, inspector, came out. She told me it wasn't anything she could do because she had to actually see the bed bugs. How you gonna see the bed bugs if you're not there at night when they come out? So we also have an exterminator that's related to somebody in corporate. Came in my apartment to spray, went to my bathroom, put water in the solution, watered it down. Don't get rid of anything. Bed bugs is worse than they were when I first reported it. Roaches is running rampant in the hallways, in the apartments. They tell us we don't see any signs of bed bugs, so we gotta have an infestation before you do anything? Doesn't make sense to me. If you have them, you take pictures of them. They say, well, you can take pictures of anybody's apartment. Put them in a Ziploc bag, so when we come, then we know you have them. If we know our neighbors have bed bugs, the office won't allow us to put a ticket in. They say they have to put the ticket in. I had a situation where it was a real bad infestation. The resident had a real bad infestation, but his mental capacity wouldn't allow him to go do what he needed to do. Told me I couldn't put the ticket in. So bad that when he did die, like a week later, and they started working on his apartment to fix it up for the next tenant, they've been working in that apartment for like 3 months to get it together. That's how bad it was. With another tenant, a hoarder. So when they go do inspections and they see this, Why don't they do anything about it? Why don't they give them some kind of notice and some kind of time to get it together? Because those situations compact the rest of us. The rest of us have to suffer. Our elevator's been down. We have 2 elevators. One been down since November 11th, but the maintenance man can use it to do what he need to do, but we can't use it. The other one that we are allowed to use, you only can push 3 buttons at a time. If you push more than 3 buttons, everything will go out. So we have to go up when everybody else go up and come down. It's a health hazard and a safety hazard because we have people in the building that have personal issues that we don't really want to be on the elevator with. It's flu season. Everybody crowding on that one elevator. We have the paramedics in the fire department because we have medical emergencies. The elevators down, they got to take the steps. The lighting outside is not right. We told them about that. Security, we don't have security. They tell us we have to pay for our own security. Our entrance door, stay open so long 5 or 6 people can come in behind you.
So, Ms. Brown, I know we're past the time, and I just want to give you an opportunity to connect with someone from DCHD so you have a direct follow-up connection, because I hear you as someone who has experienced this with several buildings. I think the men and women that are seated to your right can assist you explicitly. I don't know which person has been indicated from on that row, but someone will follow up with you directly.
I need to follow up with them?
No, they're about to give you some information, ma'am. I don't want you to leave here empty-handed. Because I hear you, because we had the
We
same.
don't have license. They don't have license to collect rent either,
Yes, ma'am.
as of artists.
So what I can help you with them is connecting them, right? Because in instances where I had buildings similar to this, I physically had to have a staff person seated in the first floor, whereas tenants were walking in that had issues following the 311s for them because they're complaint driven. So I think this is a conversation that you can have with them about how to assist neighbors in reporting. And then that allows you to have those conversations. This is why I'm trying to talk to the mayor's office about having the reverse judgments instead of a judgment in favor of the landlord to collect rent. We need judgments in favor of the tenant to get rent that they paid to someone
We call
else.
311 all the time. I have a lot of confirmation numbers. Half the time, they don't even call us back because the manager is not even going to let them in the building. They have to call us so we can come down and let them in the building.
Yes, ma'am. We have ways around that where we pursue legal action against buildings that did not let us in. So I need you to connect with them so we can see a pattern so that we are able to document it. And then we can pursue legal action against that landlord to actually enter the premises. Because I literally had a landlord on Madison, I won't shame them today, who we had to force to get the front door fixed because fire could not get in to get to someone on the 12th floor, right? And that took us working with DCHD and the law department to force them. So I just want you to connect with these people because I know they will be able to help you.
Okay.
I didn't want you to leave here empty-handed because the worst thing, and I see you as like an elder, but also like a family member of mine, right? I don't want you to leave here empty-handed because you pay us.
Yeah.
So they're gonna help you and they're gonna connect with you.
Thank you.
My name's Anthony Warfield. I'm also a resident of Hanover Square Apartments. Same thing she just complained about is what's going on there. I've been there 14 years. Now, my thing is that we request to get things done in our apartment. I also have bed bugs they are in the hallways and the elevators, roaches and mice. Not only that, when we request to get things fixed, we can't get them fixed. We have one maintenance guy for 198 apartments. And when he does do the work, he patch. He don't repaint where he patches. The thing about this, like she said about the speckers, the manager would not let them in the building. I have been threatened about getting stuff done in my apartment where she told me I couldn't move. Told me I could move. And the maintenance guy even said that to me one time, which made me upset, but I had to calm myself down. because I feel like once my apartment is well kept up, but I've been there 14 years, things need to be done. And once my apartment was a model apartment, when HUD used to come, a house would come, she would ask to show my apartment. Now, years done gone by, she done forgot all about me. You know, my stove, refrigerator, everything needs to be done. Everything. I just recently had a closet doorknob removed from my front door, because that's what the maintenance guy put on my front door. A closet doorknob. I had pictures, and not only that, when he did change the doorknob, guess where he put it at? He put it on the 9th floor on 908 door. It's a lot of things going on down there that should not be, right? You got a lot of elders there. They've been there for years. They are afraid to even go to the manager because she don't know how to talk to no one. And it's not right. I don't understand is that when they do come to spec departments, when they come to spec departments, why is it that they tell us we don't have to be home, but they always go into the same apartments every time they come? They go to the same apartments. Why not go to the apartment? And they tell us, well, HUD chooses the apartment. No, they don't. Because why would they keep going to the same apartment? So my thing is this, that things need to be done there, be in order. There's no heat, only on certain floors. The maintenance guy say, if you want heat, you live in your apartment. These are the things they say. And a person like me have to control my attitude. It's not fair to us. It's really not fair.
Well, Mr. Wolford, I'm glad you came here today. I see cards are out so they can connect you as well. There are laws that require that common spaces be heated, and we need to have that conversation with them so that they can enforce it. And I just also don't want you to leave empty-handed, because I think you need to have these conversations. But also, I mean, I think this is one of those conversations that we might, through constituent services, connect them to our federal elected officials, because those complaints can be made directly to HUD. We've had to do that as well. You just sign off on a form that allows them to directly advocate on your behalf for privacy law purposes, and HUD will send out someone to follow up with them about the conditions.
All right.
I just want to do a follow-up.
Is there anyone else for public comment? Anyone online? No raise hand function? Perfect.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to mention two things real quick. One is because we've heard a lot of these stories, one of the reasons why we're putting in the bill that I just introduced the other day is for this reason. It sounds like this guy is a frequent egregious violator. And we're going to do two things. One is the bill says, well, we're going to do a lot in this bill. It's a very long bill. There's a lot in it. But the two relevant here are we're looking at doing what's called rental property receivership. So that if a property is unlicensed and it has lots of violations, and it's clear that this is one of those cases, that the DHCD will take this property to court, and there are companies across the nation that are receivers, and that company will bring the house or the property to code, and the court would monitor that, but they have no interest in purchasing the property. They will work with getting it to a new owner. I'm serious about the fact that some of these people should not be owning properties and should not be operating here. And want to thank DHCD for that so that we can move this forward. The second thing is that it's really going to be important to make sure that, especially these buildings who are have older adults, we have in the bill that will be, a condition of the license is to also make sure that every single staff person is taking a customer service training. Because there are people who don't know how to talk to people. And that has to happen within a certain amount of time that the person is hired. There's a lot of other things in the bill. I talked about it a little bit last night, but I want to just make sure folks know, particularly those who came and took their time to pay for parking and come to City Hall, that this committee is very clear. We're hearing you. Obviously, the council hears, and I want to thank the advocates and also DHCD. I think we have got a lot more work to do, and that this hearing definitely highlighted that. So I look forward to the next steps.
Ditto, and we're in recess.